everybody. Very nice to be with you today. Yes, I think it's useful if I say a few words about the Theater Vidi Lausanne, where I'm working as a producer, so that you know from which point of view I'm speaking, because I think it can influence a lot what I'm gonna say. I have a few pictures to illustrate what I will say. I don't know if I'm able to share my screen. Yes, I am. Cool. So Tack, I don't know if you can see my, yeah, can you see my PowerPoint? Yeah, okay, perfect. So that's the Theater Vidi Lausanne, which is in Lausanne near the lake.
I think just, Tristan, we see the presentator mode, so we don't have the full screen.
Okay,
of,
I will switch. I will try to switch. Tell me if it works. No, it's good?
Perfect, yeah, now it's perfect,
Cool.
Thank you.
So Vidi Lausanne is a producing and touring theater. That means that we invite artists to come here and create their shows, which we then tour. The artists that we invite are very diverse. They come from all the fields of performing arts, theater, dance, performance. They're also quite diverse in their profiles. Some are young, emerging artists. Others are more confirmed, renowned artists. Some are local Swiss artists, others are international. So it's quite diversity in the production and programmation. In the theater, we have 4 venues, and every season we give there approximately 250 performances. But that's only half our activity, because we also give every season on tour approximately the same number of performances, a lot in France, but in Europe, and sometimes also beyond. So just so that you have a bit the frame. So we are a local theater with local roots, but with international activity. And we have been thinking about these sustainability questions for a few years. We have been concerned by them, I would say, on 2 different levels. Maybe the first level is the very concrete, the material level, because we are aware that with our activity of production, touring, we have carbon footprint, we have an impact on environment that can be significant, that can be negative. And so that comes the question about how our activities will be impacted by the context of climate change, and what are the efforts that we can make to reduce the negative impacts of our activity. So that's maybe a first level of concern. And the second level of concern is more related to the symbolic impact of the theater, because we see theaters as places where narratives can be generated, can be shared with the audience, where we can experiment, where we can make different realities meet together. And so the question is, how can we make the best use of these spaces to stimulate or at least accompany the changes in a society in relation with climate change? So that's 2 levels of concerns. And we started to work on them also on 2 different levels. First level is I would say the institutional level, where we take measures, where the direction decides about measure to try to improve things in the training of the staff regarding this question, in the energetical efficiency of the buildings, about reducing waste. So all these kind of measures. And the other level we've been acting on is the artistic level, in the programming, by trying more and more to include in the programming works that address the question of sustainability from different point of view. And in our way, in this sustainability thinking, a big step forward was made when we started working on a project that we called sustainable theater, which I'm going to speak a bit more specifically now. And this project was, I think, important for us because it really brought together these two levels we've been acting on a bit separately, the institutional level and the artistic level. And I'm going to explain you how in this project, these two levels had to come together. This project all started from discussions we had in 2019 with two artists. The first one is the British director Katie Mitchell, and the second one is the French choreographer Jérôme Bel. They are both artists that are very concerned in their life and in their artistic practices about ecology. And we were talking together and deciding that we're going to make together a project about ecology, a project that would speak about it, that would address the question. And very early in the discussions, we realized or agreed that we couldn't actually separate what the show would be about from how it would be made. We couldn't, or it didn't make sense to separate the form and the content. And so if we wanted to make a show about ecology, we also had to include ecology in the way the show was produced and it was presented. So we decided to make a production that would be like a full-scale experiment where we can take the opportunity to question our usual practices of production of touring, reflect on them in the perspective of sustainability, and try to experiment different way of doing. Just try without any preconceived idea, just and see what is the outcome. And to stimulate a bit this experimental spirit, we decided to set ourselves a rule for this project, and that was a no travel rule. We decided to make a production that will be created without anybody traveling at all. So that means we needed to create the shows with local team, local artists, but of course, Katie Mitchell and Jérôme Bel, the directors of the pieces, they are not locals. They are based, as I said, in France for one and in Britain for the other. So that means for them, they couldn't come physically to Lausanne, but they were rehearsing remotely by Zoom. Here you can see two pictures from the rehearsal. We can see Katie Mitchell being in her place in London and directing the team in Lausanne. So that was how we did the production. But then came the question of touring the production, because how can you tour without travels? An option would have been to say, okay, for this project, we won't tour. That solves the problem, but that's not how we usually produce. And we found also a bit that it wouldn't fit to the ambition of the project, because we were trying to address an issue that is global. And we wanted for this project to have kind of an activist aim. So, and in this regard, when you try to make some activism, you will like it to be shared as widely as possible. So we wanted to keep a way of touring, to make this production international like we usually do, but we had to find a way to do it without travels. And we came to the idea that after we created a show in Lausanne, we would make a score or a script of the show that would explain all the steps that need to be taken to produce the piece, from direction, casting, production, all the aspects, and that we would send over this score to partner theaters abroad, and that each partner theater will then recreate locally the show with local resources, with local artists following this score. And so we gather around us for this project 12 theaters from Europe, but also one from Asia, the National Theatre of Taipei, who were all willing to step into this experiment and to then, in their venue, recreate the show. And these, all these theaters were put together as an European network called STAGES, which means Sustainable Theatre Alliance for a Green Environmental Shift. And as we were progressing in the project, we also realized that if we wanted this production to really be experimental for everybody involved, like the technician, the communication team, the production team, both in our place, but also in each of these 12 theaters, we needed to find a way to share these sustainability context with everybody so that everybody know what we are doing and why we are doing, and to share this spirit or to stimulate this spirit of experimentation. And so we were having a lot of thoughts about how to do it. And we finally developed a workshop that is for the teams of the theater. And we based this workshop on a theory called the donut theory that has been developed by a British economist called Kate Raworth. So that's why you can see in these STAGES logo, this donut shape, because that's what inspired us for this workshop and then all this project. I don't know if you are familiar with this theory, but in case you're not, I'm just gonna say a few words about it. So that's a representation of the donut theory. And this theory says that a sustainable society can be represented in the shape of a donut with a floor, and we need to be above this floor, and a ceiling, and we need to be under the ceiling. The ceiling is the planetary boundaries, these environmental limits that need not to be overtaken. And the floor is the social minima that needs to be guaranteed for everyone. And so with that, we created a workshop, especially dedicated for the theaters, where the teams of the theater were invited, each in their own area of activity, to assess if the way they are doing what they do, how does it fit into the donut? Is it really in this safe space of the donut, or are there some problems either socially or environmentally? And then try to stimulate the imagination to imagine, think of different way of doing that would improve the sustainability of what they were doing. So yeah, that's what we did first in our theater, and then we shared it with all the partner theaters, and that was really part of the artistic project. That's something each theater were invited to make before restaging the show, so that the whole team has a context about the project. So now this project is over, at least in VD, the shows have been created. They are now having their touring life without travels. And I said it was an experiment. So with each experiment, there are lessons that are learned, there are conclusions that are drawn. And that's what I would like to speak now. What was the outcome for us of this project, and also about other measures we have been taking on these questions in the last few years. So maybe there are first outcomes that are quite concrete regarding this project. First, this project gave us some confidence to experiment new models of producing and touring. And we are continuing to work on them, continuing the experiment, not on all the projects, but we have each season some projects that try to rethink production and touring model. For example, last year we produced a project that is called Shared Landscapes, and that also took this idea of having an artistic show or concept that is then recreated locally with local teams. So that was a bit a continuation of this experiment of sustainable theater. But of course, in parallel, we still have productions that tour the usual way with people traveling, most of the times by train, sometimes they fly. We are still invited artists to come and create to Lausanne. But in the same time, we also have some projects where we experiment. And that was something this first project, Sustainable Theater, helped us doing, because now, yeah, the resistance that was there maybe in the teams have been like made smaller, so it's easier to think and go maybe further. And another outcome was maybe more for the institution, that is this donut workshop that we made. At the end, we arrived with a list of, I think, 50 ideas that came from all the departments about things that we could try to change. And some were like short-term change that have been implemented during the Sustainable Theater project, but others are more long-term goals that will take some more time, and that now each department are working on to step-by-step implement. And we also have a green team that is coordinating that. And for example, here we've got a few of these ideas or actions that emerge from the donut workshop, and that we are working on. It can be about eco-conception of the set design for a workshop, about light equipment for technical departments, about the car sharing options for our audience, for the local food, for our restaurants. So it's really like involve all the departments with some action that we are working on. So that's maybe are the more concrete outcomes of the experiments. But next to that, there are also more like outcomes in the terms of what attitude do we have regarding these questions about how this project has influenced our way of thinking sustainability and ecology in the theater. And maybe the first conclusion that we can draw is that these questions are actually complex. They are more complex than what we thought when we're starting it. They are more complex than what we would like them to be. One example is that sustainability is a holistic notion with both environmental and social aspects, as the donut illustrates well. And there's a difficulty that sometimes you take or you think about a measure that has a positive impact on the environment, but that has negative consequences on the social aspects. So for example, if we say we will stop touring at all, that means we couldn't keep all our staff members because our team is the size it is now because of our touring activities. And if we stop it, then we can keep such a big team. So that has impact on employment, which is like a social consequence. So not easy. Also the same, there is this wish to go towards the growth, and a possibility could be for theaters to say, we will make our season shorter, for example, not program anything during the winter months where we need to heat our buildings the most, but then of course that reduce the possibilities of work for artists. And as theaters, we can have like a responsibility towards them. We could, I don't know, say, for example, now we will focus on activities of being only locals, not having any global or international aspects. But then what about these cultural exchanges that are also important? We could say we could go all digital to reduce the carbon footprint of traveling. But then what about this physical presence that is important for theater? We could say, okay, we will give strict rules to the artist, but then isn't it a risk of formatting? What about the artistic freedom. So there's a lot of questions, a lot of dilemmas, and we think there are no easy solutions, that there are no unique solutions, one fit for all models that could be applied anywhere. Also, another example that comes to my mind is when we have artists saying that, okay, now I'm not taking the plane anymore, I'm not traveling like Jerome Bell and Katie Mitchell did. There are some artists, some other artists that say, okay, well, it's quite easy for them to say that because they had a long career, they could build a big reputation, and now they can afford not to travel. But what about a younger artist, maybe coming from another continent where it's really artistically and economically important to travel? So maybe we need to treat different situations differently. So yeah, that's the complexity of the things, no easy solutions. And then comes the question about how do we deal with this complexity? What do we do? And I think for that, the answer is really personal. It depends about the structure, how it functions, what its vision. So I can only share what is, and I think I'm hoping to speak on the behalf of the theater, what is our philosophy or spirit about it. And this has been, of course, nurtured by the project, Sustainable Theater Project. So we think we need to acknowledge there is this complexity. We need to acknowledge that it takes time, that we have some contradictions between what we do, what we would like to make, between different projects. We need to acknowledge that we don't have the answers, but more than the answer, it's important, we think, to keep questioning what we do, to keep always try to have kind of a distance about what we do, how we do it, and try to reflect on it. Even if we are doing that, at least try to assess what we are doing. And for that, this donut perspective is very helpful. And maybe the last thing, but the most important, is not to be daunted by the complexity of this question and say, oh, we won't act until we've got everything sorted out, because that won't happen anytime soon. But truly to act with an experimental spirit, like we did with this project. We started it without knowing the outcomes, making it like just a project, making it small. So, but really, and it brought us forward on the way. So really to experiment, even if it's on a small scale, even if then it will prove wrong. But yeah, I think there is merit in the action. And I think that's also what I heard from the conclusion of the previous speaker. I was just there at the end, and I think he spoke about this, even if there's no hope, this joy of acting. And I think we think it's important. And in this action, we realized it's very important to include all the stakeholders, to include all the team, and to include the artists. Because when we included the artists in these questions, we really noticed in our team a shift on the perspective on these questions. Because until then it was questions from the institution, which were like trying to give rules, and these were perceived as restrictions. But when these questions were made at the center of an artistic project and were carried by artists, they become a challenge for the team and not restrictions anymore. Because in the center of our activity, they are the artistic project, they are the artists that we produce and that we help to accompany. And so if we put these questions there at the center of the activity, then it becomes like a normal theatrical challenge. Like when a director comes and presents a crazy vision, there is a challenge about how are we going to make it work for the technical, for all the teams. And when we put the sustainability questions in the same place, then came the same spirit about, okay, let's be playful, let's take this challenge and let's experiment. So we really realized it was very helpful to move the questions from being constraints into being a creative challenge. So yeah, that's a bit to describe what is the state of mind this project has led us with. And now I would like to open the floor to the discussion.